Well, cheers everybody. Welcome to Hopefully Here Reading. I am Hope, and we are doing part 2 of the Booker Prize, but we are doing it with an apple pie spice misto latte, whatever you want to call it, thing. And I am surprised with how much I like that apple spice pie milk. I found it at World Market. If you're interested, it's the only place I've seen it, but I am enjoying it and bringing in the fall flavors. It has been a little cooler here lately, which I enjoy. It rained the other day, which I love. And I am here for summer to move on its way out and fall to get in here. But first, we gotta talk about Booker Prize. It's not going well. So, maybe I'll just preface it with that. It's not going well. I had every intention of vlogging my reading process through this. I had a couple of things happen and vlogging just hasn't been an option for the last couple of weeks. I have, however, been trying to read. And trying is really the operative word because I am not getting very far through these books. I'm getting pretty far through the list because I have DNF'd 4 books so far. I had one that was really successful, and it was the first book I read after my first video on the Booker Prize this year, and I just thought, oh my goodness, we are off to such a roaring success with this list. It's going to be the best. And I read the one book that I loved, and then it has been followed by 4 books I am not enjoying in any way, shape, or form. And I didn't want to just come on here and bash books. That's not what this is about. It's just different tastes for different folks. And so I did a little bit of looking further into what people were saying about these books. And for some of them, I find sometimes, okay, pause. Let's take a break for a second, collect my thoughts. I find frequently with judges and with critics, you can read what they're saying about the books and you can almost get re-excited or think, oh, I would go back to that and try it again because maybe I'm missing something, or it'll get sold to you in a way that you think, I didn't see that in the premise, or I wasn't feeling that in the book, but that seems like something I would enjoy, so let me give it another shot. I am not feeling that way about these books. I looked up the 4 that I have DNF'd and tried to understand why people were loving them or what was being said about them, and the things people were praising about the books are things that I am not looking for in my books or do not enjoy in my books. And so for me personally, these DNFs don't surprise me necessarily. They are ones that for the most part were kind of low in my interest ranking when I first reacted to the long list. And so this may not be shocking to those of you who have seen my other Booker videos, but it was just a little disappointing to me because, like I said, the first few books I read from this list were stellar books. I have bought one of them. They're on my shelves. I loved it so much that I needed to own it. And we're just gonna kind of discuss where I'm at right now for the Booker Prize. So we'll talk about the one first that would be the least surprising DNF, and that is Orbital by Samantha Harvey. I had tried reading this previously this year, earlier on. I DNF'd it. I decided to give it another go. It's not for me. It is written in a very weird, here, I have some notes because I wanted to be as non-critical as possible and not just come here and bash books. I wanted to hopefully display why it is that they don't work for me, but I can see why they would work for other people. And it's really interesting about Orbital is I found it read like a philosophy book, and I think that's kind of the point. It read far too philosophical for me, and I don't enjoy that in my reading, particularly in my fiction. I studied political philosophy, like I read the philosophers, I didn't enjoy it. And so for me, just that kind of meandering world thought process is not something I enjoy in my fiction. And unfortunately, this didn't help change my mind. The critics said that there's a mention of, okay, let's do this. The critics had, in a couple of the things mentioned, like the absence of a conventional plot and how it really was a positive for this book, and how the book was really about language and moving, and I didn't see that. You're following these astronauts as they go around the world. They're questioning their lives. They're questioning humanity and Earth. And as a package, it is not for me, but it has been for a lot of people. The judges love it, obviously. There have been booktubers that have loved this book. I am not on that train, but I think if you like a book that is written, there's no action, there's no plot, I don't even think there's really character development. It really is just this look, this very overarching look, literally and figuratively, at the world and life and humanity, then you could very much enjoy this. It just isn't a story for me. So this was the first DNF from the Booker Prize. Not great. And then this one makes me kind of sad. Headshot by Rita Bullwinkle. Another book that I had heard of before, and it was never really something that super intrigued me, that I felt really compelled to read, but I wasn't upset to see it as a book that I was going to have to pick up, because I had heard of it through predictions list for the Women's Prize in Fiction, and then I had heard of it through predictions list for the Booker Prize, and then it was on the Booker Prize. And I thought, okay, it's a book that I wouldn't pick up on my own, but it's not one that I'm opposed to reading. And the problem I have with this book is I have no desire to be in teenage girls' heads. And that's where you are through this. You're following different girls as they go through this boxing match one weekend. And so you're getting a very short period of their lives, but you're covering a very large portion of their lives through their thoughts and through their brains and how they're working through these matches and where their heads go between rounds and that sort of thing. But being in teenage girls' heads, it's not a perspective. Being in any teenage person's head is not something that I generally find super compelling, because I know who and what I thought when I was a teenager and how different that is and how skewed the world looks from that perspective. And for me personally, I don't enjoy that. I didn't find that the judges and the critics, when reading about this book, offered really compelling reasons to try to pick it up again. Like, I don't feel like any of them really screamed their love for this book. They kind of just reiterated what the book was about. And for me, it just lacked a little bit of passion in the people standing behind this book. So I put it down and didn't want to pick it back up again, and so have decided not to pick it back up again. Again, I think it's a book that people could enjoy, but I think it's for a very specific type of reader, and unfortunately that reader is not for me. But that's okay. There are lots of books in this world. It's just, of these books that have been chosen, a good handful of them are not books that I am loving. I should also say that that's not the most surprising thing in the world. I have typically not gotten along the best with Booker Prize. The International Booker that just happened was quite the anomaly with how much I enjoyed a good handful of those books. Even the beginning of this, the fact that I have absolutely loved 3 of the books so far. I've enjoyed 4, but I've loved 3. Like, that in itself is an anomaly for me when it comes to the Booker Prize, so I wouldn't consider this a total failure, but I would just it's a little disappointing, I suppose. But the prize last year, I don't think I liked anything that I read from that book, from that list. We move on to Enlightenment by Sarah Perry. This is the book I gave the least chance to. I read, 40, 50 pages, and granted, you don't always get the best of the book in the first 40, 50 pages, but I did not enjoy what I was reading. I didn't understand what I was reading. I didn't know what the characters were doing. It's all about astronomy and this, again, not for me. I didn't like the way it was, I didn't like the voice of the narrators. I didn't like the overall prose, maybe is a more correct thing to say. It was boring for me, and there was nothing in the characters or in how the story looked like it was developing that compelled me to move forward with it. And so for me, this is a pass. This is one that I think originally I was a little bit interested in because of the way the story was presented, but I found that the way the story was presented and how the story is actually told don't match up necessarily. And so that for me was a pass. Did I read anything? Oh, I just thought it was kind of funny. One of the judges wrote that this is a long and quiet book. Right there. I'm not a long and quiet book reader. I love long books, but I don't always like quiet books. And putting that together for me was not the recipe for success. So, done with that one. Should I talk about the one that I absolutely loved? Maybe let's like change the momentum of this video a little bit. What was it called? Let me get my e-reader up. And while I'm doing that, have a sip of coffee, take a breath. Okay, the book that I read and I absolutely loved was The Safekeep by Yael Vanderwooden. And in this book, you're following Isabel, who is living kind of like a recluse, sort of. She has her brothers. She's not hiding away in her house, but her house is her safe haven. And her brother has his girlfriend come and move in with Isabel. And things get kind of tense, not kind of tense, they get tense. And you're following the story of these two women as they come to grips with each other and the role they play in each other's lives. And then you're learning about, what is the other woman's name? Okay. And then, so Eva is the other woman. And you get these little snippets about their lives growing up. And when you figure out how it is, or it's revealed to you how it is that there are some connections, it's kind of mind-blowing. And I think the underlying story just about complicity and ignorance of complicity in certain pretty horrific acts, and the idea of coming to terms with who you are as a person and the time period in which this story is placed, which is the 1960s. I think the writing encapsulated that so well. And I think the story was told so beautifully. You really got into the heads of these women and how they were feeling and how they felt betrayed or loved or cheated or whatever it is that they were going through. I think the author really did a fantastic job with bringing these women to light. And I also think that if you liked Clear by Karis Davies, I think that's her name, Karis Davies, you would love this book. I think this book is why Clear is not on the Booker Prize list, to be honest, because I felt the vibe and the kind of underlying storytelling was very similar. But this one was just absolutely brilliant, and I'm so glad it was on the list because it's not a book that I had heard of previously. It's not one I would have picked up, but just like Clear, that I loved and was kind of surprised with how much I liked it. I adored this book so very much and was really, really hoping that that would be the trajectory that the Booker Prize continued on, because this was the fourth book that I read and with how much I really enjoyed it. As I said, and as obvious, that's not what happened, but I think for me the Safekeep is a highlight, and I would really hope to see it on the short list. Ultimately, there could be a really great short list that comes out of this long list. It just, for me, there's only a few books that I would want on the short list, personally. But as I said, reading is very subjective, and there are going to be people that have very, very different opinions to me about a lot of these books. But I think one of the books in particular that people are going to have a very different opinion to me on is Wandering Stars by Tommy Orange. Okay, here's the thing. There is nothing wrong with this book. I think the writing is good. I think for me, I think it's a book that at the right time and place I could really enjoy. And unfortunately, I'm not reading it at that time and place. It is technically, I think it's like a sequel, but I didn't feel like I was missing anything. I read the first 100 pages of this book. I think you're okay going into it without reading the first book, and that is what I did. My original plan was to read There by Tommy Orange and then read this. But I was thinking, I was like, that's not what the judges told us to do. The judges have nominated this book, so I'm gonna read it as just this book and see how it goes. And I don't think by not reading There, I don't think that's the reason why I'm DNFing this book. I think for me right now is the headspace I'm in with my reading that is not allowing this book to really be fruitful in my head. It's just not working for me right now. This is a violent book. It is violent in nature and in emotion and in what the reader has to go through to understand these characters. There's a lot of generational trauma. There's a lot of trauma. There's abandonment, addiction issues. It's a very heavy book, and it seems a little unrelenting. which is challenging to get into when you're not quite there, which is why I think this book for a lot of people is going to be spectacular, because I can see myself at a different time and place reading this and absolutely adoring it. It is just not for me right now in this moment in my life, and that is, again, okay. You're following a Native American family through generations, and you're jumping from so far you were jumping between quite a few different points of view. Each person seems to get a few chapters, but there are several different points of view, and you're following kind of generation after generation. And for me, the one thing I noticed is they all seemed to have similar voices. They went through different things, they had different things happen to them, but the voice, the actual writing, physical writing of the voices was very similar, and I found that to be just a little hard to wrap my head around, because for me, in order to really get behind a character, I want to hear their distinct voice, and in this case, they all started to kind of muddle together a little bit for me personally, but it could again just be the way I am right now in my reading and in how this book was presented to me. It's a very personal story. You can tell that the writer has a very deep connection to to the story that is being told through this. And you see in, I think it was one of his blurbs on the Booker website, kind of the connection he has from his cultural background to the cultural background of the characters in this book. And you can see that it's very thoughtfully done, but it is unflinching in its look at the way Native populations have been and are treated in America today. And I think it's a really important story. For me right now, it is not one that I wanted to finish reading. It just wasn't working for me, but that is not to say that it isn't a book that a lot of people aren't going to absolutely adore, and I would not be at all surprised if the most people loved this book. Just for me is not it at this moment in time. But there we have it. Those are the books that I have continued to read on the Booker Prize. Obviously, I still have a few more to go. I think I'm waiting for other ones from the library. Not I think, I am. But what else is on here? Wandering Souls, I DNF'd. Wild Houses, I enjoyed. Held, I didn't enjoy. So I have Creation. Oh, I have one more to talk about. Oh no, this is terrible. This Strange Eventful History by Claire Massad. I have an e-form, and I'm not going to be finishing it. Everything about this book is a book that I should enjoy. It's a family saga, it's through World War II, but I found the first character to be really compelling, and then it switched to the next character, and I'm disliking his point of view so much that I don't want to keep going. And I think that that is unfortunate, because if there are, I don't know how this book works. I don't know if it bounces between people. I don't know if it goes back to the person who started the book. I have no idea. But I'm disliking the way the story for the second person is going so much that I'm not going to continue on, and that is unfortunate. It was a book that I was really looking forward to, because again, it is a type of book that in theory is one that I would really enjoy. I do know that it was one of the books that some people had a little bit of trepidation around, so I unfortunately have fallen into that camp, but it is what it is. I'm just not getting along with these really big, heart-wrenching, like purposefully heart-wrenching stories almost. I think for me right now, it's not writing that I'm enjoying. I don't like when things are done with an agenda, and I think some of these books were done with an agenda, and I think a little too heavy-handedly in that case, and for me personally, it's just not working right now. So that is another book that is gonna get checked off and unfinished for this one. So I still have Playground by Richard Powers to read. I have James by Percival Everett. I can't get Stoneyard Devotional, that's not available to me. So just the 3 books are left. So they better go well, so at least we get almost a 50-50 split in terms of books that I like and books that I didn't like. But that's where we are. If there are any books on this list that I have DNF'd that you have absolutely loved, please tell me and let me know that maybe I just need to give them, except for Orbital. I've already given Orbital 2 chances. It's done. But if there are any of these books that you're just like, no, Hope, you absolutely have to push past and read these, please let me know. Like I said, there are some of these that I think I would be willing to give another chance at some point. They're just not working for me right now, and it bums me out quite a bit. But that being said, hopefully there will be at least one more part to this. Hopefully I get my hands on the last 3 books from this list. I am kind of upset that they're not going as well as they did. I'm also kind of upset that this isn't a vlog style, and I apologize because I do really enjoy doing the vlog style. I just couldn't do that through the last couple of weeks because of things. And so that is where we're gonna leave this one. I hope very much that you at least enjoyed a little bit of this video, even though it was a bit of a downer, and I will see you in the next video. Bye. I'm also gonna finish my drink now before it gets cold.